She had always known she was different, but never had Alara imagined that the very thing she could not control, the fact that she could not bear children, would one day cost her everything. Her family had tolerated her silence for years, her gentle hands, her selfless sacrifices, but when the whispers in the village grew louder, when cousins and neighbors muttered that she was cursed and useless, her family hardened their hearts and made the decision that shattered her soul. One cold dawn, when mist hung low over the woods and frost kissed the ground, they took her under the pretense of gathering herbs, and when her back was turned, they vanished into the trees, leaving her with nothing but the brittle air and the echo of betrayal. Alara stumbled, calling out for them, her voice breaking like glass in the emptiness, but only silence answered. The forest, vast and unforgiving, closed in around her. She wandered, clutching her shawl tighter against the cruel wind, until her legs trembled, and her body collapsed beside the roots of an ancient oak. Hours passed, or maybe days, it was hard to tell, before the sound of laughter stirred her from the edge of unconsciousness. It wasn't mocking laughter, not the cruel kind she had endured from her family and the villagers, but the unguarded laughter of children. She blinked, and before her stood two small figures, a boy and a girl, their hair messy, their cheeks smudged with sawdust, carrying small axes far too big for their hands. Lumberjack children born to the forest, raised among trees and timber, their spirits wild and unbroken. "Who are you?" the boy asked, his eyes bright but cautious. Alara's lips trembled as she tried to answer, but only tears came. The girl knelt beside her, offering a piece of rough bread from her pocket, and whispered, "Don't cry. You can stay with us." And just like that, warmth began to seep back into Alara's frozen heart. The children led her to a hidden cabin deep in the woods, a place their father had built with his own hands, walls sturdy with pine, smoke curling from the chimney. Their father, a broad-shouldered lumberjack named Garrick, emerged when he saw the stranger, his axe slung across his back. For a moment his gaze hardened, suspicion flashing, but when his children clung to her skirts and pleaded, "She needs us, Papa," something in him softened. He carried her inside with arms that felt like shelter and set her by the fire. Days turned to weeks and Alara slowly healed, not only from the hunger and exhaustion but from the deeper wounds of rejection. She helped around the cabin, mending clothes, cooking meals, teaching the children songs and stories she once cherished. Though she could not give birth, she found herself mothering in ways she had never known possible, tucking the children into bed, wiping tears when they scraped their knees, guiding them with patience and love. The children grew to adore her, clinging to her skirts wherever she went, their laughter filling the cabin with a music Alara had once thought she'd never hear in her life. Garrick watched quietly, his eyes lingering on her with a mix of gratitude and something deeper, something unspoken. He had been raising his children alone since his wife died years ago, and though he had never complained, the burden had been heavy. Alara's presence was like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Still, Alara wrestled with fear. At night, when the children slept, she would sit by the fire and whisper to herself, "I am not enough. If he knew the truth that I can never give him more children, he would turn me out just like my family did." Yet Garrick seemed to see through her silence. One evening, when the snow outside blanketed the earth and the firelight painted his face in gold, he sat across from her and spoke in his deep, steady voice. "Alara, I don't know what broke you before you came here, but I see the way my children look at you. I see the way they laugh again, how they sleep peacefully. You've given them more than I ever could alone. You've given them back their joy. And if you ask me, that makes you more of a mother than any woman who ever bore a child." His word struck her like a thunderclap, shattering the chains of shame she had carried all her life. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe she was not cursed. Maybe her worth was not measured in children she could never have, but in the love she gave freely. The days grew brighter and soon whispers spread in the village about the mysterious woman who had been abandoned yet found a home in the forest. Some villagers sneered, calling her pitiful, but others marveled at the strength of a woman who had risen from ashes, who had built a new life not by blood but by love. Alara no longer cared about their words. She had a family now, not by birth but by choice. The children clung to her hands. Garrick stood by her side, and together they formed something unbreakable. One spring morning, when wildflowers blossomed along the forest floor, Garrick took her hand in his calloused one, looked into her eyes and said, "Stay, not because my children need you, but because I do. You are the heart this home was missing." Tears spilled down her cheeks as she nodded, her soul finally at peace. Ilara had been left to die in the woods, but the forest had given her a new life. She had been rejected by those bound to her by blood, but she had been embraced by those who chose her. And in that choice lay a love far deeper than anything she had known. So if you're listening to this story now, remember this truth. Family is not always about who you're born to. It's about who stands by you, who chooses you, who loves you for exactly who you are. And just like Ilara, you may find your worth not in what the world says you lack, but in the love you give that no one else can. If this story touched your heart, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because we bring you stories of courage, love, and hope every day, and who knows, the next one might be the reminder you need that you, too, are enough. Life in the forest changed Ilara in ways she never imagined, and though she had found a place of belonging with Garrick and his children, shadows from her past still haunted her nights. She would dream of her family's cold eyes, of the moment they abandoned her, of the sound of twigs snapping as they walked away without looking back. She would wake with tears on her cheeks, her heart aching with the memory of being deemed unworthy. Yet every morning she found Garrick's children curled against her, their little arms wrapped around her waist as if afraid she might vanish. And in those moments she knew she had been found for a reason. Garrick, though quiet and strong as the timber he worked with, was a man who noticed everything. He saw the way Ilara sometimes lingered at the edge of the trees, as though waiting for someone who would never come. He saw the way her smile faltered when the children asked about her family, and though he longed to ease her burden, he let her speak in her own time. The forest taught patience, and he lived by its rhythm. One evening, while Ilara prepared stew and the children played by the fire, Garrick sat sharpening his axe. The blade gleamed in the firelight, and in his deep, steady tone he said, "The woods keep secrets, but they never judge. That's why I trust them more than people." Ilara looked up, her hands pausing mid-motion, and for the first time she spoke of her past. She told him how her family had deemed her useless, because she could not bear children, how they left her in the woods as though she were nothing more than a burden to be discarded. The words spilled like poison she had held too long, and when she finished, her eyes brimmed with tears. Garrick listened without interruption, his jaw tightening, his eyes burning with quiet fury at the cruelty she had endured. When she fell silent, he set down his axe and said firmly, "They may have left you in the woods, but the forest gave you to us. My children didn't need a woman who could bear more. They needed a woman who could love them as you do. That's worth more than anything your family ever understood." His words wrapped around her like armor, and for the first time, she no longer felt ashamed of the emptiness in her womb. In the weeks that followed, Ilara and Garrick grew closer, bound not just by the children, but by the silent understanding of two people who had weathered loss and found strength in survival. She began to join him on his lumber trips, learning to swing an axe, to guide logs down the river, to listen to the whispers of the pines. Garrick watched her with quiet admiration, marveling at the way she embraced the forest as if it were her own flesh and blood. But the peace they had built was soon threatened. Word reached the village that Ilara was alive, thriving in the forest with Garrick's family, her family filled with shame at